because your earliest source, matter of fact, your only first century source that you have in Islam is the Quran. And over and over and over and over and over again, it denies that he performed miracles. And how do you get around that? You just make up your own imaginary ordering that makes absolutely no sense. And then we have to somehow defend any traditional ordering of the chronology of the Quran, and just take your word for it in the meantime. Your earliest source repeatedly denies that Muhammad could perform miracles. Where are you going? Where are you going in the first century that denies that Jesus could perform miracles? Performs all kinds of miracles in Mark, performs all kinds of miracles in Matthew, performs all kinds of miracles in Luke, performs all kinds of miracles in the Gospel of John. Jesus performed all kinds of miracles in our earlier source. What Christian even goes to sources from 2 centuries after the events? We don't. We wouldn't trust those sources. We wouldn't trust a source from 2 centuries after the event. That's all you've got to go on when you're talking about Muhammad performing miracles. This source from 2 centuries afterwards. So really weird case here. But if you're
Okay, so we heard David Wood saying, well, the Quran says Prophet Muhammad didn't do miracles, and the Hadith came 200 years later, and Jesus did miracles according to the Gospels of Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, etc., etc. So he's saying the historical evidence for Jesus performing miracles is better than the historical evidence of Muhammad performing miracles. I think that's the gist of what he's getting at. Now, this is part of a bigger video because David Wood and Apos, when David Wood and Apos aren't busy giving each other blowjobs and handjobs, they're annoying Muslims, or they're watching Muslim videos and trying to make fun of Muslim videos. So in this case, they're making fun of Farid Response, because Farid Response says the Prophet Muhammad did miracles according to the Quran. Now, I'm not a big fan of Farid Response. I don't really watch his videos, but I think David Wood is being inconsistent here and he's being a little hypocritical here because. No, I didn't watch this entire video. This entire video is a little bit like longer, on the longer side, so I didn't watch this entire video. Well, hang on, let me see how big this. Yeah, this video is like 2 hours long. I don't have time to sit through all of it, but I just fast forwarded, and I think this is the gist of David Wood's argument, so that's why I'm just commenting here. The Quran does not deny that the Prophet Muhammad couldn't do miracles. The Quran is not saying that. I already said this in my debate with David Wood and Sam Shamoun back in 2020. The Quran is denying specific miracles to specific people. The reason why is because even if they were granted, or even if the Prophet Muhammad did these miracles, they still wouldn't believe. Nowhere in the Quran does it say Prophet Muhammad can never do miracles. That's not the point. That's not the point of those verses. The verses are just denying specific miracles to specific people. Just because these people didn't get the specific miracles they asked for doesn't mean no miracle was never shown to them. And then he says, well, the Hadith came 200 years later. That is absolutely bullshit. The Hadith were written by the disciples of the Prophet Muhammad. Abu Bakr wrote Hadith. Ibn Abbas wrote Hadith. Ali wrote Hadith. So the Prophet Muhammad's disciples wrote down Hadith, and these Hadith were passed down from one generation to the other generation until we get to Sahih Bukhari. So there's a really good book called Studies in Early Hadith Methodology by Mustafa Al-Azmi, where he records that many of the disciples of the Prophet Muhammad wrote down Hadith. So, in other words, you have eyewitness testimony for the Hadith, because the Prophet Muhammad's disciples or companions wrote down the Hadith. Then those books got passed on to the next generation, and the next generation, which was Sahih Bukhari, which was Bukhari in the third, or I believe in the late 2nd or 3rd century, wrote down his Hadith using previous written documents for his Hadith. So Hadith did not come 200 years later. David Wood is just absolutely wrong here. Sahih Bukhari survived, or those early Hadith books are survived by Sahih Bukhari collecting them, etc., etc. But notice the inconsistency here. Whenever David Wood attacks the Prophet Muhammad, he uses Sahih Bukhari. Yet when we show him that there's that Prophet Muhammad did miracles according to Sahih Bukhari, he says, "Well, it's 200 years later. It's too late." So which is it? Is Sahih Bukhari authentic, or is it reliable or not reliable? You can't have your cake and eat it too. You can't say, "Well, the Hadith came 200 years later." When we or Bukhari came 200 years later when we show that the Prophet Muhammad did miracles according to Sahih Bukhari, according to the Hadith of Sahih Bukhari, then you can't turn around and say, well, the Prophet Muhammad did this bad thing or this bad thing using the same source, Sahih Bukhari. So which is it? Is Sahih Bukhari reliable or unreliable? You can't have your cake and eat it too. You can't just dismiss Sahih Bukhari when the Prophet Muhammad does a miracle in the Hadith of Sahih Bukhari, and you can't turn around and say Bukhari is um, reliable when there's a supposed bad thing the Prophet Muhammad did in Sahih Bukhari. So look at the inconsistency of David Wood. But anyways, I just want to point out a major inconsistency here. Christians believe that John the Baptist didn't do miracles. According to John chapter 10, verse 41, John the Baptist did not do miracles. So Christians believe that prophets, according to the New Testament, can be prophets without doing a miracle because John the Baptist himself didn't do miracles. And if we read the Gospel of Matthew, this is the important part, I think this is the point David Wood misses, is that if you read the Gospel of Matthew, chapter 12, verse 40, I believe, Jesus says, the evil Pharisees come to Jesus and they ask for a sign, and Jesus says, no, an evil and adulterous generation asks for a sign. No sign will be given to you except the sign of Jonah. Gospel of Matthew chapter 12 verse 40, I believe. So in the Gospel of Matthew, Jesus is denying specific miracles to those Jews. And he says that only evil and wicked people ask for signs and miracles. So when these pagan Arabs are asking for the Prophet Muhammad for a miracle, they're evil and adulterous, according to the logic of Jesus. And God is not going to send miracles to those people for entertainment purposes. So that was the whole point. They were asking for miracles for Jesus, not to strengthen their faith, but for entertainment purposes, for their own desires. Same thing with those Arabs. Those Arabs were asking for miracles for their own desires and for their own entertainment purposes. And the Quran is saying, no, we're not going to give you those miracles because there's no point. You're not going to believe anyways. Same thing with Jesus. Jesus says, no sign will be given to you, the Pharisees, the evil Jews. No sign will be given to you except the sign of Jonah, because these Jews just wanted miracles for their own desires or for their own entertainment purposes. Same thing with those pagan Arabs. They were asking for miracles, not to strengthen their faith, but to have some kind of to have their desires fulfilled or for entertainment, for their own entertainment purposes. So that's kind of the problem with David Wood. He's very inconsistent when it comes to Islam, because those same arguments can be thrown back against the Bible. Again, John the Baptist didn't do miracles. Read the Gospel of John chapter 10 verse 41. Christians believe he's a prophet. So even if we were to grant that the Prophet did no miracles according to the early source, which is the Quran, let's just say for the sake of argument, even though that's not the case, but let's just say for the sake of argument, Prophet Muhammad could still be a prophet, because John the Baptist himself didn't do miracles. He's a prophet. So according to New Testament theology, the Prophet Muhammad can still be a prophet if he doesn't do any miracles. But I read all those verses that those Christians say that Prophet Muhammad didn't do miracles according to this Quranic verse. That none of those verses are denying that the Prophet Muhammad can't do miracles. They're just denying specific miracles to specific people because their hearts were evil. They were evildoers anyways. So I just want to point out this glaring inconsistency of David Wood, and the fact that Samuel Green and David Wood did not read those verses carefully, because those verses are denying specific miracles to specific people. Just because those people didn't get the specific miracle they were asking for, doesn't mean no miracle was ever shown to them. So again, the hadith are filled with Prophet Muhammad doing miracles, and not only that, but according to Ibn Ishaq, the earliest biography of the Prophet Muhammad, which David Wood says is the earliest biography, Ibn Ishaq, Prophet Muhammad did miracles according to Ibn Ishaq's biography too. So even Prophet Muhammad like healed people or he multiplied food according to Sahih Bukhari, or I'm sorry, according to Ibn Ishaq, etc., etc. So even according to the earliest biography of the Prophet Muhammad, which is Ibn Ishaq, Prophet Muhammad did miracles according to that book too. So I just want to point out the inconsistency of David Wood here. Let me see if I can get that. See if I can get those references of Prophet Muhammad doing miracles according to the earliest biography. Just give me 1 minute here. Let me see if I can dig it up right now. Just 1 second. Again, but all right, hang on. Let me see if I can dig up the references. Okay, so according to the earliest biography, which is Ibn Ishaq, Prophet Muhammad did miracles. See Ibn Ishaq pages 451 to 452, where the Prophet Muhammad was able to multiply food, etc., etc., and the history of al-Tabari, volume 6, pages 66 to 67. Again, Prophet Muhammad was able to do miracles like having a date palm walk towards him, or a date tree walk towards him in the history of al-Tabari. Again, the history of al-Tabari is before Sahih al-Bukhari. Hang on, let me see if I can get another miracle here. Just 1 second here. 1 second. Let me see if I can get the other miracle. Okay, I can't find it. I can't find the exact reference right now. Hang on, let me see if I can. Okay, no, I apologize. So no, I can't find the reference right now. But again, there are other miracles that the Prophet Muhammad did according to the earliest biography. But the one reference I can find right now is Ibn Ishaq, pages 451 to 452, where the Prophet Muhammad was able to multiply food or make more food available, like Jesus was able to miraculously provide food. Same thing with the Prophet Muhammad. He was also able to miraculously uh, provide food according to the earliest biography, which is Ibn Ishaq. So my point is David Wood is being inconsistent, and he doesn't know, like, he hasn't studied the hadith properly, and he's, as I like to say about him and Apos, talking out of his ass. So hopefully this is just my 2 cents on the Prophet Muhammad doing, or does the Quran deny miracles to the Prophet Muhammad? And the answer is no. And Sahih Bukhari, Ibn Ishaq, all the earliest sources that we have on the Prophet Muhammad show him or describe him as performing miracles. So, again, the Quran is not a biography of the Prophet Muhammad. We have to go to Ibn Ishaq, Ibn Hisham, the history of al-Tabari, Sahih Bukhari, Sahih Muslim, Abu Dawud, to know biography or certain events of the Prophet Muhammad. We need to look at those sources to learn about the chronological life of the Prophet Muhammad. So, according to the earliest biographies and according to the Hadith, etc., Prophet Muhammad performed miracles. So, given that fact and given the Quran, if we harmonize both of them, which David Wood won't do, we can see that the Quran was denying specific miracles to specific people, and that the Prophet Muhammad did miracles by God's help, not to these disbelieving evil people, but to help his own people. Again, the Quran chapter 54 says that the disbelievers or the pagans were granted the miracle of the splitting of the moon. Quran chapter 54, if you read Tafsir ibn Kathir, which records the earliest Muslims in their literature, according to the commentary of Ibn Kathir on the Quran chapter 54, the context of the Quran chapter 54 is the Prophet would split the moon in half and put it back together when the Meccans were asking, or when the pagans were asking for a miracle. So that's the correct context of the Quran chapter 54. Again, we have according to the earliest biography, Prophet Muhammad healed people. He was able to multiply food or supernaturally provide food. Sahih Bukhari has the Prophet Muhammad doing miracles like healing people, providing food supernaturally, or providing milk supernaturally, etc., etc. So the Prophet Muhammad did miracles the same way Jesus did miracles in the New Testament. So hopefully this is just my 2 cents on this whole, a brief 2 cents on this issue of miracles and the Quran and the earliest biography and the Hadith of the Prophet Muhammad. Stay tuned, more videos coming up ahead.